Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Staley slumped in his seat as the interstellar transport ship descended through Zorgan's violet atmosphere. His stomach lurched, partly from the turbulence and partly from the anxiety gnawing at his insides. He'd expected a routine diplomatic mission, not this. "Marriage," he muttered, shaking his head. "To the ugliest princess in the galaxy. Fantastic." The ship shuddered as it touched down on the landing pad. Max straightened his uniform and plastered on his best diplomatic smile. Showtime. As the airlock hissed open, a blast of hot, sulfurous air assaulted his nostrils. Max grimaced but maintained his composure as he strode down the ramp. A delegation of Zorians awaited him, tall, blue-skinned humanoids with elaborate headpieces. "Welcome, Earthling Max Stellar," intoned the lead Zorian in a buzzing accent. "I am High Counselor Zix. We are most pleased by your acceptance of this great honor." Max's smile tightened. "The honor is all mine," he lied smoothly. "I look forward to strengthening the bonds between our worlds." Zix's crest rippled in what Max hoped was approval. "Indeed, the wedding ceremony will commence at moonrise. Until then, you may rest and prepare yourself." "Whoa! Wait!" Max spluttered, his facade cracking. "Tonight? Don't you think that's a bit rushed?" The Zorians exchanged confused glances. Zix's multifaceted eyes blinked rapidly. "Is this not the customary timeline for Earthling unions?" Max forced a chuckle. "Right, of course, just a little pre-wedding jitters, nothing to worry about." As the delegation led him toward an awaiting hover transport, Max's mind raced. This was insane. He'd barely set foot on the planet, and they were already marching him down the aisle to marry a woman, alien, whatever, that he had never even met. The hover transport zipped through sprawling crystal spires and bubbling lava flows. Max barely registered the alien landscape, too preoccupied with his impending doom. What did the princess look like? How bad could she be to earn the title of ugliest in the galaxy? He shuddered, imagining tentacles and eye stalks. They arrived at an opulent palace complex. Max was whisked inside and shown to luxurious quarters to refresh himself before the ceremony. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair. "Think, Stellar," he muttered. "There's got to be a way out of this." A chime sounded and a Zorian servant entered, arms laden with elaborate robes. "Your wedding attire, honored Earthling." Max eyed the gaudy garments with distaste. "Thanks, but I think I'll stick with the uniform, representing Earth and all that." The servant's crest drooped. "But it is tradition. To refuse would gravely insult the royal family." Max sighed. "Fine. Let's get this over with." An hour later, Max stood before an ornate mirror, barely recognizing himself. The robes were a riot of clashing colors and jangling baubles. He looked like a deranged Christmas tree. A gong echoed through the palace. Showtime. Heart pounding, Max followed his Zorian escort to a vast ceremonial chamber. Hundreds of blue-skinned aliens filled the room, all eyes fixed on him as he walked down the aisle. At the far end stood High Counselor Zix, and a figure shrouded in shimmering veils from head to toe. Princess Zolda, his bride-to-be. Max's steps faltered as he approached. This was really happening. He was about to marry a complete stranger, an alien, no less, all in the name of galactic diplomacy. He reached the dais and turned to face his veiled bride. Even through the layers of fabric, he could tell she was trembling slightly. "Join the club, sister," he thought wryly. High Counselor Zix raised his arms. "Esteemed guests, we gather to witness the union of Princess Zolda of Zorgan and Max Stellar of Earth. May their joining forge eternal bonds between our worlds." The ceremony proceeded in a blur of alien rituals. Max recited vows in mangled Zorian, nearly choking on the guttural consonants. Finally, Zix pronounced them married in the eyes of the seven moons and the great lava lords. "You may now gaze upon your bride," Zix intoned. Max's heart raced as he reached for Zolda's veil. This was it, the moment of truth. He steeled himself and lifted the shimmering fabric. His jaw dropped. Staring back at him were the most stunning violet eyes he had ever seen, set in a face of unearthly beauty. Zolda's blue skin seemed to glow, offsetting her delicate features and full lips. A curtain of shimmering silver hair cascaded down her shoulders. This was the ugliest princess in the galaxy? "Hi," Max croaked, suddenly feeling like an awkward teenager. "I'm Max." Zolda's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed suspiciously. You do not recoil in horror?" Max blinked. "Why would I? You're gorgeous." A collective gasp rose from the crowd. The assembled Zorians watched as Zolda's cheeks darkened to a deeper blue. Was she blushing? "How dare you?" Zix sputtered. "Such cruel mockery of our princess." Max held up his hands. "Whoa, easy!" "I'm not mocking anyone, I'm serious. Where I come from, she'd be considered incredibly beautiful." The room erupted in confused murmurs. Zolda stared at Max, a mix of hope and disbelief in her eyes. "Truly?" she whispered. "You do not find me repulsive?" "Not even a little," Max assured her with a warm smile. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Though, I've got to say, these robes are pretty hideous." A surprised giggle escaped Zolda's lips before she could stop herself. The sound sent a pleasant tingle down Max's spine. Maybe this arranged marriage thing wouldn't be so bad after all. The rest of the evening passed in a whirlwind of alien customs and rituals. Max did his best to follow along, but his gaze frequently returned to Zolda. She moved with quiet grace, her head held high despite the pitying looks from the other Zorians. As the celebration wound down, Max and Zolda were escorted to their new shared quarters. An awkward silence fell as the door closed behind them. "So," Max cleared his throat. "Some wedding, huh?" Zolda wrung her hands nervously. I must confess, I do not understand. You truly find me attractive?" "Absolutely," Max assured her. "Though I'm a little confused myself. Why does everyone act like you're so ugly?" Zolda sighed and gestured to her face. "By Zorian standards, I am grotesque. My features are too soft, my coloring too pale, and my body—" She shuddered. "I lack the proper number of appendages and orifices." Max choked back a laugh. "Well, from a human perspective, you're stunning. Like a supermodel." "Model?" Zolda tilted her head, puzzled. "It means, professionally beautiful," Max explained with a grin. "Maybe we should take you to Earth sometime. You'd be a sensation." A small smile tugged at Zolda's lips. "Perhaps, though I fear I would find your world as alien as you find mine." "Fair point," Max conceded, glancing around the ornate bedroom, suddenly very aware of their situation. "So, what now?" Zolda's cheeks darkened again. "We are expected to consummate the union." Max rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I know this is a weird situation for both of us. Why don't we just get some sleep and figure things out in the morning?" Relief flooded Zolda's features. "You are very kind, Max of Earth. I admit I had feared— well, I had heard that human males were brutish and demanding." Max laughed. "Hey, some of us can be perfect gentlemen when the situation calls for it." He gave an exaggerated bow. "Your Highness." Zolda giggled again, the sound music to Max's ears. As they prepared for bed on opposite sides of the enormous royal chamber, Max found himself thinking that maybe, just maybe, this crazy arranged marriage might work out after all. Little did he know their adventures were only beginning. The next morning, Max awoke to the unsettling sensation of being watched. He cracked one eye open to find Zolda perched on the edge of the bed, staring at him intently. He jolted upright, clutching the sheets to his chest. "Good morning." "Fascinating," Zolda murmured, leaning closer to examine his face. "Your epidermal coloration shifts during your sleep cycle. Is this a common trait among your species?" Max rubbed his stubbly chin self-consciously. "You mean my 5 o'clock shadow?" "Yeah, human guys tend to grow facial hair. Not exactly at my most dashing first thing in the morning." Zolda furrowed her brow. "But it is not yet the 5th hour, and I see no shadows." "It's just an expression," Max explained with a chuckle. "Though I guess a lot of our sayings probably don't translate well here." "Indeed." Zolda tilted her head, a small smile playing at her lips. Perhaps you could teach me more of your Earthling expressions. I find them intriguing. Was she flirting with him? Max felt a flutter in his stomach that had nothing to do with Zorgan's alien atmosphere. A chime interrupted the moment, and the bedroom door slid open, admitting a pair of Zorian servants laden with trays. "Your morning sustenance, your highnesses," one intoned, placing an array of utterly unidentifiable foods on a nearby table. Max eyed the spread warily. Gelatinous globs pulsated ominously next to what looked suspiciously like live creatures. Insects. His stomach turned. Don't suppose you guys have any coffee?" he asked hopefully. The servants exchanged puzzled looks. Zolda leaned in, whispering, "Another Earthling expression?" "More like a necessity," Max muttered. He forced a smile. "Never mind. This all looks great." As the servants withdrew, Zolda gestured to the alien feast. "Please enjoy. The candied glowworms are a particular delicacy." Max swallowed hard. "You first, I insist." Zolda selected a wriggling morsel with delicate blue fingers and popped it into her mouth. "Mmm," she hummed appreciatively. "Simply divine." Steeling himself, Max gingerly picked up one of the squirming treats. He closed his eyes, said a silent prayer to whatever cosmic forces might be listening, and took a bite. To his shock, it wasn't half bad. The texture was unusual, but the flavor was surprisingly sweet and complex. "Huh," he mused, reaching for another. "Not exactly bacon and eggs, but I could get used to this." Zolda beamed, clearly pleased by his acceptance of Zorian cuisine. As they shared the meal, Max found himself relaxing despite the surreal circumstances. Conversation flowed easily between them. Their peaceful breakfast was interrupted by the arrival of High Counselor Zix, his crest quivering with agitation. "Newlyweds," he buzzed. "Your presence is required in the Grand Hall immediately. A matter of utmost diplomatic importance has arisen." Max and Zolda exchanged worried glances. So much for their honeymoon period. They hurried to dress, Max grateful to be back in his Earth Force uniform rather than the gaudy ceremonial robes. As they followed Zix through the palace's winding corridors, Max's mind raced. What could have happened? The Grand Hall was a flurry of activity. Zorian nobles argued in their clicking language while servants scurried about with scrolls and glowing data orbs. At the center of it all stood a towering figure that made Max's jaw drop. The alien was easily 9 feet tall, with mottled green skin and 4 muscular arms. Its head was dominated by a single enormous eye that swiveled to fix on the newcomers. "Behold," Zix announced, "the emissary from Glor's Prime." The Cyclopean giant's eye narrowed as it regarded Max and Zolda. When it spoke, the words reverberated through Max's skull like a sonic boom. "So this is the vaunted Earth-Zorg alliance? A pitiful human and Zorgan's reject princess." Max bristled at the insult to Zolda, but she placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Emissary," she said, her voice calm but steely. "We welcome you to our world. What brings you to Zorgan?" The Glorian's eye swiveled between them. "We have watched your feeble attempts at galactic relevance with amusement, but now you overstep. The Glor's empire will not tolerate such an alliance in our sector." Max's diplomatic training kicked in. He stepped forward, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. "With all due respect, emissary, the alliance between Earth and Zorgan poses no threat to Glor's Prime. We seek only peaceful cooperation and cultural exchange." "Naive fool," the giant boomed. "You understand nothing of galactic politics. This union cannot be allowed to stand." Zolda's grip on Max's arm tightened. He glanced at her, seeing fear in her violet eyes, but also determination. "The union stands," she declared firmly. "Max of Earth is my husband, and our worlds are now linked. If Glor's Prime wishes to challenge this, they challenge both Zorgan and Earth." The Glorian's eye widened, then narrowed dangerously. "You dare defy the Empire. Very well, you have made your choice. Prepare yourselves for war." With that ominous proclamation, the emissary stomped out of the hall. In its wake, chaos erupted as panicked Zorians shouted and gesticulated wildly. Max turned to Zolda, his head spinning. "Did we just start an interstellar war on our first day of marriage?" Zolda's lips quirked in a wry smile. It would seem so, husband. I don't suppose your Earth Force training covered this particular scenario. Max laughed despite himself. Funnily enough, they left out the pissing off Cyclops Empire's chapter at the Academy. He sobered quickly. But hey, we're in this together now, right? For better or worse, as we say on Earth. Zolda nodded, a determined glint in her eye. Indeed. Though I suspect there will be far more worse than better in our immediate future. As the Zorian nobles continued to panic around them, Max and Zolda shared a long look. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. It wasn't the honeymoon either of them had imagined, but it was shaping up to be one hell of an adventure. As the chaos in the Grand Hall subsided, Max and Zolda retreated to their chambers. The weight of the day's events hung heavy between them. Well? Max sighed, collapsing onto a plush alien couch. That escalated quickly. Zolda perched beside him, her brow furrowed. I fear we have brought great danger to both our worlds. Max reached out, hesitating briefly before taking her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth beneath his fingers. Hey, we'll figure this out. Earth and Zorgan united can stand up to these Glor bullies. Zolda's violet eyes met his, a spark of hope kindling. You truly believe that? Absolutely, Max assured her, mustering more confidence than he felt. Plus, they clearly underestimated us. Big mistake. A small smile tugged at Zolda's lips. Perhaps you are right. Still, I believe we have a long and difficult road ahead. The path ahead, Max grinned. Good thing we make a pretty great team already. As the twin moons of Zorgan rose, casting an ethereal glow through the chamber windows, the newlyweds found themselves talking long into the night. Max regaled Zolda with tales of Earth, while she shared the rich history and customs of her own world. Wait, Max laughed. So you're telling me that burping is considered a formal greeting here? Zolda nodded solemnly. Indeed. The louder and more pungent, the greater the respect shown. Max shook his head in amazement. And here I've been trying to be polite this whole time. No wonder people kept looking at me funny. As their laughter subsided, a comfortable silence fell between them. Max found himself studying Zolda's face, marveling at the play of moonlight on her blue skin. She truly was breathtaking. Zolda caught his gaze, her cheeks darkening slightly. What is it? She asked. Just thinking, Max murmured, that I might be the luckiest guy in the galaxy. Their eyes locked, and the air seemed to crackle with sudden tension. Max leaned in slowly, giving Zolda plenty of time to pull away. Instead, she met him halfway. Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory. Max marveled at the softness of her lips, the faint taste of alien spices. When they parted, both were slightly breathless. Wow, Max whispered. Zolda's eyes sparkled. Indeed. What followed was a night of discovery and passion. As it turned out, Zorian and human anatomy was remarkably compatible. Max found himself thanking whatever cosmic forces had brought them together. In the afterglow, Zolda traced lazy patterns on Max's chest. I must confess, she murmured, I had not expected this. Max chuckled. What, interest? Romance? No, Zolda replied, propping herself up to meet his eyes. Happiness, I had resigned myself to a loveless political marriage, and yet... Max pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I know what you mean. This whole arranged marriage thing seemed like a nightmare at first. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. As they drifted off to sleep, Max realized that for the first time since arriving on Zorgan, he felt truly at peace. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of diplomatic meetings, strategic planning, and stolen moments of intimacy. Max threw himself into learning Zorian customs and politics, determined to be a worthy consort to the princess. During a particularly tedious council session, Max leaned over to whisper in Zolda's ear, You know, on Earth you'd be a total Instagram star. Zolda's brow furrowed adorably. Instagram? Is that some sort of weight measurement? Max stifled a laugh. No, it's a social media platform. People share pictures and videos of their lives. Trust me, you'd have millions of followers. That sounds terrifying, Zolda murmured, a smile tugging at her lips. Ahem. High Counselor Zix's disapproving buzz cut through their whispered conversation. If the royal couple has finished their private discussion, perhaps we might return to the matter of planetary defenses. Max straightened, chastened. Of course. Sorry, Counselor. As the meeting droned on, Max couldn't help but notice the sideways glances and hushed whispers from some of the other nobles. Not everyone seemed thrilled with the changes the Earth-Zorg alliance was bringing. Later, as they strolled through the palace gardens, Zolda voiced her concerns. I fear some of the court do not approve of our union, she sighed. They say I am becoming too Earth-like. Max frowned. What's that supposed to mean? They claim I smile too much now, Zolda explained. That I lack proper Zorian decorum. Some even whisper that I have been... She lowered her voice. Corrupted by your alien influence. That's ridiculous, Max scoffed. You're still you, just happier, I hope. Zelda's answering smile was radiant, immeasurably so. Max pulled her close, not caring who might see. Then to hell with what they think. We'll show them that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. Little did they know dark forces were already moving against them. In the shadows of the palace, a group of disgruntled nobles gathered in secret. This cannot be allowed to continue, hissed Lord Vex, his crest quivering with agitation. The princess grows bolder by the day, flouting our sacred traditions. Lady Myrex nodded in agreement. And this Earthling, he meddles in affairs he cannot hope to understand. Did you see how he dared suggest altering our defensive formations? Something must be done, rumbled General Zark, for the good of Zorgan. Lord Vex's multifaceted eyes glittered with malice. I may have a solution, one that will rid us of this troublesome Earthling and return the princess to her proper place. As the conspirators leaned in to hear the plan, none noticed the small maintenance droid lurking nearby, its sensors recording every treasonous word. The next morning, Max awoke to find Zolda already dressed and pacing the room, agitation evident in every movement. Whoa, what's wrong? He asked, sitting up groggy. Zolda whirled to face him, her expression a mix of worry and anger. Max, we have a problem, a big one. She quickly filled him in on the plot uncovered by the maintenance droid. The nobles planned to frame Max for stealing sensitive military data, using it as an excuse to nullify their marriage and potentially even execute him for treason. Well, Max muttered, running a hand through his hair. I knew some people weren't happy with us, but it's insane. Zolda sat beside him, taking his hands in hers. We must act quickly. If they succeed in planting false evidence... Max nodded grimly. We need proof of their plan, and we need to expose them before they can move against us. But how? Zolda asked. They will be on guard now, and we cannot trust anyone at court. A slow grin spread across Max's face. You know, on Earth we have a saying, fight fire with fire. I think it's time we did a little scheming of our own. Over the next few days, Max and Zolda put their plan into action. They made a show of arguing in public, letting rumors spread that their marriage was already on rocky ground. Meanwhile, they worked tirelessly behind the scenes, gathering allies and evidence. Max reached out to his old Earth Force contacts, calling in favors to get advanced surveillance tech smuggled onto Zorgan. Zolda used her royal influence to place loyal servants in key positions throughout the palace. Their big break came during a state dinner, honoring a delegation from a neighboring star system. As Max circulated the room, playing the part of the boorish Earthling to perfection, he overheard Lord Vex and Lady Myrex discussing the final stages of their plan. Tomorrow night, Vex hissed, when the Earthling is alone in his study, we'll plant the data crystal and alert the guards. By morning, he'll be in chains. Max forced himself not to react, instead loudly belching and exclaiming, Wow, this Zorian booze really packs a punch. As the nobles recoiled in disgust, Max caught Zolda's eye across the room, a subtle signal passing between them. A nod passed between them. It was time to spring their trap. The next evening, Max made a show of retiring to his private study, ostentatiously carrying a briefcase stuffed with official-looking documents. Once alone, he activated the hidden camera Zolda had helped him place throughout the room. Right on schedule, the door creaked open, and Lord Vex slipped inside, a small data crystal clutched in his blue fingers. He moved quickly to Max's desk, clearly intent on planting the false evidence. "Looking for something?" Max's voice rang out, startling the Zorian noble. Vex turned, his eyes wide with panic. "You? But you were supposed to be passed out drunk?" Max stepped from the shadows, grinning. "Sorry to disappoint, though I've got to say, your little scheme is not very original. We figured it out days ago." Before Vex could respond, the doors burst open, and royal guards flooded in, led by Princess Zolda herself. "Lord Vex," she declared, her voice ringing with authority, "you are under arrest for conspiracy and treason against the crown." As the stunned noble was led away in chains, Max couldn't help but quip, "Guess you could say your plan crashed and burned." Zolda rolled her eyes fondly. "Must you always have the last word?" Max pulled her close, not caring who saw. "Hey, it's part of my Earthling charm." In the days that followed, the failed coup sent shockwaves through Zorian society. With the evidence Max and Zolda had gathered, the entire conspiracy was quickly unraveled. The traitorous nobles were stripped of their titles and exiled to the outer moon. More importantly, the ordeal seemed to galvanize public opinion in favor of the Earth-Zorg alliance. Max and Zolda were hailed as heroes. Their quick thinking and teamwork proved the strength of their union. As they stood on a balcony overlooking the cheering crowds, Zolda leaned into Max's embrace. "It seems we have weathered our first crisis," she murmured. Max pressed a kiss to her temple. "First of many, I'm sure. But hey, as long as we're together, I'd say bring it on." Zolda smiled up at him, her violet eyes shining. "Indeed, though perhaps we might have a brief respite before the next interstellar incident." Max laughed, pulling her closer. "I'll see what I can do, Your Highness. I'll see what I can do." As the twin moons of Zorgan rose in the violet sky, Max realized that despite the challenges they had faced, and those surely still to come, he wouldn't trade this new life for anything in the galaxy. 6 months after thwarting the coup attempt, Max found himself restless. The initial excitement of interstellar diplomacy had faded into a monotonous routine of meetings and ceremonial appearances. He needed a creative outlet. On a whim, he started writing down some of the wild stories he had concocted to entertain Zolda. To his surprise, the words flowed easily, spinning tales of daring Earth adventurers and exotic alien beauties. "What are you working on so intently?" Zolda asked one evening, peering over his shoulder at the glowing datapad. Max hesitated, suddenly self-conscious. "Oh, just jotting down some ideas. Silly stuff, really." Zolda's eyes widened as she skimmed the text. "Max, this is wonderful. The way you describe the azure-skinned Neoran princess, it's positively poetic." Max felt his cheeks warm. "You think so? I mean, I might have been inspired by a certain blue-skinned beauty I know." Zolda playfully swatted his arm. "Flatterer. But truly you should consider sharing these stories. I think many on Zorgan would be fascinated by your unique perspective." Encouraged by Zolda's enthusiasm, Max polished up a few of his best tales and submitted them to a popular Zorian entertainment feed. To his shock, the response was overwhelming. Within weeks, Max's stories of heroic Earthlings and alluring alien women became the talk of the planet. Fan mail flooded in, praising his vivid descriptions and thrilling adventures. "I don't get it," Max said, scrolling through the latest batch of messages. "Half of this stuff is just exaggerated versions of Earth sci-fi tropes. Why are they so crazy about it?" Zolda curled up beside him on the couch, a knowing smile on her face. "Because, my dear, you're giving them something new. For too long, humans have been seen as brutish and uncultured. Your stories show a different side, one of bravery, romance, and charm." Max grinned. "So I'm single-handedly improving Earth's galactic image through trashy space opera? Not exactly what I had in mind when I signed up for this diplomatic gig." "Perhaps not," Zolda laughed, "but you cannot deny the results. Look, there's even talk of translating your work for distribution on other worlds." As his popularity grew, Max found himself invited to exclusive literary gatherings and high-profile events across Zorgan. He reveled in the attention, always with,